My model of business is the Beatles.
I think of most things in life as either a Bob Dylan or a Beatles song.
And maybe pick the Beatles.
If I want to pick somebody, let's say I want to pick the Beatles.
And I'll play a Beatles song. A Beatles song, let's say a Beatles.
The Beatles were Beatles.
The Beatles.
The Beatles.
The Beatles, Beatlemania, the Beatles.
So, ladies and gentlemen.
And now, our host for this evening,
The Beatles!
Close your eyes.
You know, they were four very talented guys who kept each other's kind of negative tendencies in check.
John, Paul, George, and Ringo.
They balanced each other, and the sum was greater than, the total was greater than the sum of the parts.
For 5 years before Apple, we were friends. He'd come into town every so often, see my latest invention, and turn it into money for both of us.
The best bit of us, always has been and always will be, is when we're backs against the wall.
The goal was pure and simple. We want to put everybody under one roof, and we want to encourage unplanned collaboration.
What could it be, Paul? Something in the way she moves.
Just say whatever comes into your head each time. Attracts me like a cauliflower until you get the word, you know.
The Beatles' #1 band of all time, Sgt. Pepper's.
Coincidence? I think not!
The Beatles start the record label. It's called Apple. It becomes super popular.
Ringo means Apple.
Ringo means Apple.
Yeah.
Did you know that when you named your company Apple?
The Beatles company, Apple Corps.
Apple and Apple Corps have been doing battle over the Apple logo since 1978.
Steve Jobs starts a computer company. It's called Apple. Steve gets the rights to use the name Apple, but he promised never to get involved with music. And then there was music.
This amazing little device holds 1,000 songs.
The iTunes Music Store is what we're going to call this.
The launch by Apple Computer of its iTunes website, selling pre-recorded music.
You know what they say?
In an agreement with the Beatles recording label, all 16 Beatles albums are now available from iTunes.
Let's say I want to pick the Beatles, I just tap them. And here's the Beatles songs with their albums right here.
The product, the prodigal. My son returns.
It's my pleasure to introduce the Beatles.
If you want to sit and argue it, you're a mutant. You don't even know what you're talking about. It's always the Beatles in any discussion.
Yeah, well, everything's fun off and on, you know.
It got a little boring. I mean, it was great when it first happened. When you'd come on, there'd just be nothing but wah, you know.
So Apple is reorganizing. John Sculley on the left is taking control from Stephen Jobs on the right.
First of all, the world knows about two Steve Jobses. Steve Jobs, one was ruthless, a lot of people did a lot of nasty things.
We don't run to the press and go, this guy's a son of a liar. And we went through the roof about this.
The Beatles were drifting apart on their own, you know.
And who knows who broke, everyone has a theory.
I know.
Who broke it up?
John.
John did.
When we're 50, you know. Here they are again, yesterday, all my
Yoko sat in that very chair.
I don't think the Beatles fulfilled everything that George wanted to do by any means. And I think that perhaps he felt sometimes a bit of a junior member.
I am tired of being Ringo when I know I was John. Everybody loves Ringo.
Look, you know, I'm there in the studio and it's like, I don't feel good. I don't feel part of it.
Were you held down by the other fellas?
Well, very subtly, yes. As you know, I had such a lot of songs mounting up that I really wanted to do, but I only got my quota of 1 or 2 tunes per album.
How can you get bored doing what you did?
Because it was going on, it was not going anywhere.
You know, you run into, I don't know, narcissism. I'm in control of everything.
Sure.
You think John became John by winning a raffle, Woz? You think he tricked somebody or hit George Harrison over the head? He was John because he was John.
He was John because he wrote Ticket to Ride. And I wrote the Apple II.
On the Apple II side, they were talking about ready to quit because they'd been so insulted by being treated like they were nothing. That's how Jobs treated it.
A long time ago, I said that I didn't want to be singing She Loves You when I'm 30. I said that when I was about 25 or something, which in a roundabout way meant that I wouldn't be doing whatever I was doing then.
Steve Jobs took a chance and invested $10 million to launch Pixar.
He shared with me his dream to make the world's first computer animated film.
To infinity and beyond!
And I in the end, ended up buying into that dream, both spiritually and financially.
All the nice music that George made and Ringo made and Paul made and I've made since they broke up.
Well, I'd laid off for about, I think it was about 6 years or something, so the first few things we did were, you know, a little bit more difficult than it had been kind of thing, but after a couple of months, you got back into it, you know.
Some people can't understand that, you know, because Beatles was such a big deal. They can't understand why we should actually enjoy splitting up. But there's a time, you know, there's a time when people grow up and they leave home or whatever they do and they go for a change, you know, and it was really time for a change.
All we're doing is we've got a new band now and I'm just kind of continuing, and if it comes out a bit like the Beatles, I don't think it will, but if it did, it wouldn't worry me, you know, pretty good band.
Hi, I'm Steve Jobs, and I make computers.
Steve Jobs' Next Computer.
Here we are at the Next Computer, an environment that has much, much better networking than PCs and Macs.
Was this one a ballad?
Yeah, come on, I'll teach you.
Imagine no possessions.
Especially for John, I can say that he's at least sort of outgrown, you know, whatever they were in, you know.
You've got a lot out of life so far. What, if anything, are you looking for now?
But something even closer to our souls as humans is music.
The inevitable question.
Are they ever going to get back together?
Despite his success with Pixar, Jobs didn't forget about his other company, Next. He was looking at an unlikely partnership. His old company, Apple.
Steve Jobs got back into talks with Apple, a company he had been away from for more than a decade.
Steve Jobs went back to Apple after 11 years, at first as an advisor, but his role grew when it lost its CEO.
Almost immediately, Steve Jobs filled the void, filled the power vacuum, and essentially took control of the company.
I don't feel my job is to win a popularity contest right now. You know, I feel my job is to help the team at Apple do the right things to turn this company around so that it can really prosper again, and I think that's going to happen.
Is there any possibility?
I think over the period of being apart, we've all thought, oh, that wouldn't be nice, that wouldn't be bad, you know. I hope it'll change, because I'm fed up of waking up in the papers, you know. But if it doesn't, you know, my friends are my friends, whatever way. You know.
Death of a man who literally changed the way we live our lives every day.
I was so stunned because I have very dramatic memories of where I was when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan, when I heard that JFK had been shot, and I'll never get this memory out of my head, just where I was, just getting a phone call, and they just said, "Have you heard the news?" And I instantly knew what that meant.
Steve Jobs, the visionary founder and leader of Apple Computer, has died at the age of 56.
What do you say? It's like the world lost a John Lennon.
Former Beatle John Lennon is dead. He was shot a short time ago outside his Manhattan apartment.
Lennon was shot and killed at about 11 o'clock last night.
So to sort of sum up the whole thing, I've chosen one off John Lennon's record, Double Fantasy, which I think is a beautiful song. It's very moving.
I think it was like that for everyone. It was just so horrific. And for me, it was just so sad that, you know, I wasn't going to see him again.
You must watch what your former colleagues are doing, and do you derive satisfaction from it? Are you happy for their successes?
Yeah.
You must be pleased with what Paul's doing now, John.
I'm pleased that everybody's doing well, you know.
Well, it's just one of those songs when you hear it for the first time, you know it's a killer. And I still love looking at footage of him singing it.
We didn't break up because we weren't friends. We just broke up out of sheer boredom, you know. And boredom creates tension.
If I can't have a fight with my best friend, I don't know who I can have a fight with.
If you and John and Yoko do meet, though, you're not really gritting your teeth.
No, we're good friends.
Yeah.
At one period when they're asking me, I was saying, no, never, what the hell, go back, no, not me. And then there came to a period when I thought, well, why not, if we felt like making a record or doing something. I mean, I've worked with Ringo and George. I haven't worked with Paul because we had a more difficult time, but now we're pretty close, you know.
I feel very blessed that we got over it.
Yeah.
Because if we hadn't, and then John goes and gets killed, I don't know how I would have dealt with that.
I'm just going to miss him.
Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple. Thank you very much.
Well, you know, with the Beatles, when they were together, they did truly brilliant, innovative work. And when they split up, they did good work, but it was never the same. And I see business that way, too. It's really always a team.
No, it's been a very nice day. Thanks for having us, George. Thank you.
Being really beautiful and moving. I like hanging out with you.
But there's that one line in that one Beatles song, you and I have memories longer than the road that stretches out ahead. And that's clearly true here.
Well, you know what? I think we should end it there. Let's just end it there.
I'm gonna have a little tear right here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.